In the past 10 seasons, the Seahawks have drafted at least one running back in 8 of those 10 drafts, and they have a certain body type they're looking for out of all the players that have been drafted at the running back position by Seattle during the Schneider and Carroll era. All of them were between 5'10" and 6 foot tall, and between 202 pounds and 228 pounds. They've typically preferred in that 5'10, 5'11, 215, 220-pound range. And most of the running backs they picked have been in pretty close proximity in terms of height and weight. They like those shorter, squattier running backs that are quick, explosive, not necessarily the fastest guys. They have drafted a few running backs that ran in the 4.4s, but they've been willing to draft running backs in the 4.5s, even low 4.6s, if they tested well in terms of vertical and broad jump and the agility drills, 3-cone, short shuttle, and they fit the size parameters the Seahawks have looked for. Let's look at an example of two of the running backs Seahawks have picked recently that ended up being starting caliber running backs to see where they stacked up from a size and athletic threshold standpoint. The Seahawks picked Chris Carson in the 7th round of the 2017 draft coming out of Oklahoma State. He was one of the more unheralded running backs in that class. Even though he had really good testing numbers, he checked off all the boxes the Seahawks are looking for. 6 foot, 218 pounds, a well-chiseled 218 pounds. He ran a 4.58 40-yard dash at the combine, also posted a 37-inch vertical jump and a 130-inch broad jump. Those are really impressive numbers for a 218-pound running back. His 3-cone and short shuttle times, I made sure to put an asterisk next to this. Those were at his pro day. And not that I discount pro day numbers because they still matter, but it's tough to compare pro day numbers for players from different schools when not everybody is testing in the same place and they don't have the same exact protocols for testing. So to me, those numbers are always a little more tricky to work with than in Indianapolis at the combine, where everybody is running 40s in the same spot in the same week. That unifies the testing, something you can't do with pro days. Looking at Rashad Penny, he never ran a 3-cone or a short shuttle. Didn't do it at the combine, didn't do it at San Diego State's pro day. But another back, 5'11", 220 pounds, ran a 4.46, one of the faster running backs that the Seahawks have ever drafted. His explosives weren't quite as good as Chris Carson. 32.5-inch vertical jump, 120-inch broad jump. Still respectable numbers, though, for a 220-pound running back. What does that mean for this year's draft class? This is actually a pretty deep group of running backs. And when you look from a long-term perspective, the Seahawks have some questions at that position. Rashad Penny did re-sign in March, but he's on a 1-year deal worth nearly $6 million. He's had durability issues throughout his NFL career. Chris Carson's coming off of neck surgery. It remains unclear whether he's going to be able to make it back and play or not. The Seahawks are optimistic they will have him back and available to run with Rashad Penny, but he might not be able to play this season. It remains to be seen. Travis Homer is going to be entering the final year of his rookie deal. So you look towards 2023, the Seahawks need to add another running back. I expect that they will draft one. Looking at this class, the numbers, it's difficult to break down in terms of Seattle's threshold because no running backs ran the short shuttle or the 3-cone drill in Indianapolis at the combine this year. Not a single one. So all the numbers that I've been able to get for those two particular drills came from pro days. Again, not that I'm discounting those, but it's tough to compare those with all those pro days being done in different sites with different people running the testing. It's tough to have a uniform evaluation of those numbers, particularly when you're looking at things like the 40-yard dash, 3-cone drill, and the short shuttle. So how does this class stack up to the running back Seattle has picked over the last 12 years? From a height and weight perspective, you can see there are a handful of backs in this class that are shorter than any of the running backs that Seattle has taken. You've also got a handful of guys under 200 pounds. Seattle has had J.D. McKissick in the past on their roster, so they have had sub-200-pound running backs. They just haven't drafted any of them, and those have typically not been their workhorse backs. They've been change-of-pace backs. So you can expect Seattle's going to be looking for a back that's in that 210 to 225-pound range, most likely, if they're looking for a feature back. And this class features a lot of guys that check off that box, and most of these guys ran a sub 4.62 40. That's the slowest 40-yard dash for a running back that's been drafted by the Seahawks under John Schneider and Pete Carroll. The short shuttle and three cone numbers, there's a lot of red here, a lot of guys that don't meet their threshold. But again, those numbers were taken at pro days. I guarantee if these guys were all participating in the combine in those drills, they would have posted better numbers, a lot of these guys. I've happened to notice that the combine numbers tend to be more accurate, and it's really tough when you have these individual pro days to account for that. So as far as how that's going to impact them getting drafted by the Seahawks, I don't see that being a big part of the evaluation just because they didn't do those tests at the combine. As far as vertical jump and broad jump, every single guy on this list meets Seattle's threshold, and all but one hit the bench pressing threshold. A few of those were taken from pro day workouts as well. That one is an easier one to sell. You can lift 225 pounds 9 times. You can lift it 9 times, regardless of the setting. But most of the players on this list check off the vertical jump, broad jump, and bench press aspect, and most of them run the 40-yard dash in a sufficient time based on Seattle's thresholds of the running back position. The big question marks, of course, are the short shuttle and three cone drills, with none of these players participating in them at the NFL Combine. Looking at this class as a whole, a ton of running backs that are in that size range Seattle has preferred, and a lot of them who stylistically match up with the Seahawks want to do. Players like Dameon Pierce, Abram Smith, hard-nosed runners between the tackles that have good size, decent enough speed, decent enough agility, and they can pass protect, all around running backs. This is a pretty deep class, and there are a number of players that would fit in with the ones that Seattle has drafted the position in the past, at least from a size and athletic standpoint. Again, I'd be surprised if Seattle does not draft a running back in this class, and they might pick one earlier than expected, looking at the long-term prognosis at the position.